Welcome to this installment of the Dean's Conversation Series. We are very happy to welcome our Chancellor, Michael Amiridis, who is going to be with us this evening. We have some pre-prepared questions, but we would like to hear from you as well. So if you have a question for the Chancellor, please use the Q&A box, not the chat box, for that question, and we will try to weave them in. So Chancellor, thank you for being here. Just to start out, we'd love for you to share your background, a little bit about your family, and how you ended up coming to the U.S.
Thank you, Darby. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm still hoping that sometime in the near future we're going to be able to do this face-to-face. We talked about it at the very beginning when the school became part of UIC. I would very much like to sit an evening with the faculty and the students. And as useful Zoom is to us, and we're lucky to be able to train on it, there is a different level of connection that we can have when we are in the same room together. So, my background, I born in Greece. I was born in Greece, in the northern part of Greece. It's a coastal town on the Aegean. And every time that I go back there, I wonder why in the world did I leave from here? And then a couple of days later, I talk to my friends, my classmates about the financial issues that they have and the unemployment. They say, I know now why I left from here, and I remember that. I'm a first generation student. I was the first in my family to go to college. My parents were children of the Second World War. They didn't stand a chance. They had to work early to make a living and support their families and then support each other. I grew up in a union house. My father was involved, but they both believed in education, higher education that they hadn't experienced themselves. They strongly believed in it, and they pushed both me and my brother to go to the university. Of course, when we ended up there, they loved us, they supported us emotionally, but they couldn't support us technically and understanding. So I've gone through the struggles that other first-generation students have gone. And coming to the US, I remember when I told my dad after, because I came out of a 5-year engineering there, was a 5-year program. After I ended up the 5 years, I said, look, I'm thinking about continuing to get a doctoral degree at the university. He says, you've been studying for 5 years. It's time to make a living. Now you're telling me that you want to go on and continue this thing. But that was the point. The point was that my advisors, my professors told me that I should do it, and I listened, and I did it. I had good grades, and I managed to come to the US because it was and continues to be the gold standard of higher education in the world.
What do you miss most about Greece? And when we're not in a COVID world, how frequently do you get to go back?
I miss the lifestyle. I miss the fact that I can be there in the summer and stay at the beach, and then in the evening, 9, 10 o'clock, go out, have something to eat and sit outside. I used to, I go every summer, especially to see my parents, and these summers became shorter and shorter the more administrative responsibilities I had. My mother is the last one. My father passed away 8 years ago. My mother passed away this summer, actually in July, and I was not even able to go there. So I'm not sure. I think I'm at an end of an era right now with both of my parents gone. So how frequently I will go beyond that, I don't know. I mean, it's a different place when I get there.
So you finished college in Greece and you came over for graduate school. Pick up the story there. Tell us about the rest of your educational background and your initial work experience.
I'm a proud Badger. I came to the University of Wisconsin here. I had no idea where Wisconsin was when I decided to come here. All that I knew was north of Chicago. And I had no idea what the weather was. When I first arrived here, I thought, okay, I'm here for a surprise, right? But after I got my degree, my doctoral degree from Wisconsin, and my wife at that time also got her undergraduate degree there, I went to the industry for a short period of time. I worked in a corporate environment, in a corporate R&D. And then 3 years later, I realized how much I was missing academia, how much I wanted to teach and do research. So I went to the University of South Carolina. And I was convinced that I would be there 4 or 5 years, and I stayed there for 21 years. We stayed with Euro there for 21 years. Nothing, I was a faculty member. I started as an assistant professor. I struggled to get tenure. I wrote my proposals. I did my classes. And then slowly, progressively, I started assuming different roles. I became department chair. Then 4 years later, I became dean. I became the provost of the university. And what I learned in terms of leadership, I learned it through fire. I learned it by being in the positions and by dealing with the problems that we had on a daily basis.
And talk to us a little bit about the process that brought you to UIC.
They called me. Mina Rao was the chair of the committee, and she called me. I remember we were having lunch with Iro, and she said, well, I want to talk to you about Chicago. And I thought, Chicago is an interesting place. For me, it was any time that we had a few bucks with Iro as students, and it was not very frequent, maybe once a semester, we would say, okay, let's go down to Chicago. Let's take the bus, go down there, go to the Art Institute, go to Greektown to eat some decent food, and then get back onto the bus and come back to Madison. So for me, it was the entertainment place. It was a great place to be. So I said, yeah, let's talk about it. And the more that I discovered about UIC and heard about UIC, the more exciting it became. That's how it came.
I was waiting for you to describe it as south of Madison.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. At least 5 to 10 degrees warmer than Madison. So
tell us about the different roles and duties that you have as Chancellor of UIC.
You know, sometimes people ask me, what do I do? And jokingly, I say, I'm responsible for everything that goes wrong at UIC. Everything that goes well is the great work of the faculty and the students. But everything that goes wrong, I'm responsible for it. What I mean by that is that everything at the end comes through the Chancellor, whether it's my office, whether it's academic issues. Yeah, it works. The process works through the deans, works through the provost, but I'm the one that has the final signature before we go into further, the Board of Trustees or the state. Everything that has to do with operations, from what we do, how much does it cost, how we do it, it's my responsibility. Everything that has to do with the relationships. External relationships with other institutions, relationship with the legislators, relationships with the community at large, relationships with alumni. It comes through me. So it's pretty much everything that we do at the end. Not that I do it, other people do it, but I'm responsible for it at the end. So we're part of a system, and the system has a president. So the terms chancellor and president confuse some people. So what is your role vis-a-vis the president of the system? Yeah, we do it on purpose, I think, in academia. We have all of these titles, provosts, presidents, chancellors, just to confuse people and not to be able to evade whatever they want to ask. And what's even more interesting, as you know, Darby, in other universities, the chancellor is the head of the system, and the presidents are the presidents of the university. So that's even more confusing. I'm in essence the person responsible for Chicago, and my counterpart, Robert Jones, is responsible for Urbana, and Karen now, the interim chancellor at Springfield. What the system does, what is the connecting tissue? In essence, team is coordinating the 3 different universities, and then coordinates between the universities and the Board of Trustees, which is the governing body, and we have only one Board of Trustees for the entire system, as well as with the state. So that's how I would best describe it. So you've been here, is it 6 years, about 6 years? It will be 6 years in March. It will be 6 years in March. So what do you like most about being Chancellor? Well, I went back to academia from the corporate world for 2 reasons, to teach and to do research. I didn't go to deal with budgets. I didn't go to deal with HR issues. I didn't go to deal with politicians outside of the university and so on. But here I am. That's what I'm doing. Actually, I'm not teaching and I'm not doing research. I'm dealing with everything else. So I think that, and I'm not alone. Everybody that is in leadership positions, I assume it's the same for yours. there. Although the dean still remains within his or her professional community and still has a better connection with what's going on in the college. But I think to be successful in these roles, you need to get satisfaction not from your own success, but from the success of others. You need to make a change in the way that you view things in academia, and really get thrilled when a student does well, or when faculty members do well, because otherwise you're only dealing with the problems and you become depressed very quickly. So what gives me satisfaction and what I enjoy is to see our students actually cross the stage and graduate and see their faces and see their families celebrate. That actually makes my year. To see them being recognized, to see the faculty members that we have get big awards, get recognition, make it, get tenure. So that's what gives me satisfaction, and see also the pride and the connection with the alumni. So it's the people. It's the people and their success.
What about the flip side? I don't want to ask you what you like least about your job. If you're willing to answer that, that's great. But what are some of the more difficult types of decisions that you have to make as chancellor?
Well, personnel decisions are always difficult, right? When you have to make decisions about people who are not performing well, or they are misbehaving and so on, and still treat them with respect is a difficult part of every job. If it's not difficult and if it's easy for some people, then I worry about them. If they enjoy dealing with these issues, then I would be concerned. But even more than this is priorities. How do you prioritize? There are many competing excellent ideas in a university, and many important things and potentially impactful priorities that people want to take, and yet we're limited. We're limited with the type of resources that we have. So prioritizing, choosing and setting everything down and making difficult choices between what we pursue and what not is the most challenging part of the job. Now, this is the ordinary part of the job. This is what I do. That's what I've been hired to do. What is the extraordinary? And that's actually is the most, not challenging, but the most sad part of the job is when we deal with loss of life, especially for students. We are at a university to celebrate life. We are at a university to advance life. To help people move on, and yet even in our communities we have loss of life. Last week one of our students got hit by a car on Morgan and Roosevelt, and he was killed. Right, that's the most difficult part of the job. Dealing with this situation, communicating with the family which expects to hear from the university. That's the one that stays with me. Every name, every face.
Yeah, that has to be just horrible. Especially you're so positive and you do revel in other people's achievements. I know that was very difficult. You are an amazing spokesperson and cheerleader for UIC. Talk to us about what you perceive to be UIC's greatest strengths at this moment of time and the greatest challenges that we're experiencing right now.
I think you can summarize our strength with three words, right? Excellence. We are an excellent university, and we're getting recognition for it right now. I mean, you probably saw the most recent Times of Higher Education rankings. 3 years in a row now, they have us in the top 25 public universities in the country. Top value and so on. But it's a combination of what our faculty members do, what our students do. We are excellent, and we better believe this because we're very modest. I know in the South, and you spend time down in the South as well. If it's true, it's not bragging.
Columbia is my hometown.
Yeah, if it's true, it's not bragging, right? And here we're not even bragging about the truth. That's one thing that I think one of the strong cards that we have, we're an excellent university. We have a unique environment at UIC. We have managed to achieve what others across the country are trying to achieve. We have a very diverse environment, very respectful environment to all of them. That doesn't mean that we don't have problems, right? We have some problems as well. But when you look at where we are today, in terms of the diversity of this campus, in every sense of the word, racial, ethnic, religious, LGBTQ, students with people with disability, they're all here. And they're here because the word is out, that UIC cares about what you do, not necessarily which God do you believe from, or which country you are from, or how is your accent. I jokingly tell people that I came to Chicago and I lost my accent. I don't have an accent anymore because everybody has an accent at UIC. So the environment is the second one. And you know, the third one, which is interesting, is the location. Where we are embedded in the center of a global city. And the location actually was viewed as a liability 30, 40 years ago. But things have changed. This generation wants to live, learn, play in urban environments. And the location gives us a great advantage. So I think that I can summarize it in 3 words: excellence, environment, location. What are the challenges? We're a unique model. People ask me, who are the universities that are our peers? Who do you compare yourself across the country? And I have a very hard time finding universities that they are like UIC. There are a lot of excellent research universities, but they're not urban serving. They don't have the diversity that we have. We have the highest number of Pell Grant recipients among the Carnegie One institutions. Then there are other universities that demographically look like us, but they don't have the research. They don't have the excellence that we have. So we kind of stand alone, and we have managed to create this model over the years, nurture this type of community. And now we are exactly where we want to be. The challenge with this is the finances. Who pays for it? Because this can only be done with strong support from the state, because our students cannot afford to pay the tuition that students pay at other universities like us in terms of research and excellence. That keeps the university going. So the biggest challenge is always to balance the budget. Make sure that we have enough to support our students, who stay affordable at the same time that we are excellent in research. I heard one of the deans down in Urbana-Champaign talking to an external group, and he made a very good point. He said, excellence is expensive. And I agree, excellence is expensive. Inclusion is expensive also. And when you have 2 expensive components, right, how do you manage to keep both of them going? We're doing it.
What do you envision for UIC post-pandemic? Meaning, how do we take what we've learned and move forward? And more generally, how might higher education in our university change once the pandemic ends?
Well, look, we know from history that pandemics have the potential. The history is teaching us that pandemics have the potential to change the route of history itself. A lot of people believe that, and I do as well, that we will see significant changes after this pandemic as well. Expecting that we will go exactly where we were in January of 2020 is unrealistic. At the same time, I have been hearing a lot in, in news shows or think tanks of people that they are my age or older, pontificating about what this next generation is going to do and how we're going to meet the needs of this generation. They haven't met a Zoomer in their lives, all right? So they're making conclusions and they base them on what they think and what they believe is going to happen. So I'm a little bit reserved also about these predictions of huge changes. There's no question that we experienced a change in the learning and the work flow. For the first time, many of us in our lives over the last 7 months, we have seen that you can do it remotely. You can do your work remotely and you can learn remotely. I heard the provost from Georgia Tech, Rafael Brass, today saying that, well, yes, we have done this, but this is not truly a remote online education. He said, well, students understand that we did the best that we could, and I give this effort a C+. I would take a course from this guy because he's easy, I think. The plus is not in my, I think we did the best that we could, and we got exposed to this idea, right? But there's a lot of room for improvement. So I think that as we get out of this emergency situation and as we continue to improve our models of remote education, I think that we will find out that the same way that the books changed the way that universities operated 500 years ago, they knew the idea of universities, right? Technology can do the same, but it's a tool. It's not necessarily, it's one tool in the toolbox. We do much more than just communicating knowledge, and that we do things that you cannot do from a distance. But having this tool in our toolbox, right, certainly will allow us to experiment with different modes, change our capital infrastructure to some extent, flip classrooms, being able to do exciting things in person, and do some other things that they are not that much excited, but students can do it on their own. One thing that worries me, and I want to avoid, is some kind of a new segregation of higher education. Because the remote mode is less expensive, or can be less expensive. It's not right now for us, because the same cost structure that we have, but it can be less expensive, as some of the for-profits have proven over the years. I'm worried about segregating and say, well, those of you who do not have enough money, you can do an online degree. And the ones that really have resources can do a face-to-face degree with more benefits. That would be a disaster. So I think that we have to work with blended models, making sure that the students get all the benefits that they have from this process. And we need to listen to them also, right? How much have they liked what they have experienced recently?
Well, we might hear from some of them tonight. As a reminder, if you have a question for the Chancellor, put it in the box and we'll weave that in. You were a proponent of the law school joining UIC. Can you give us a little bit of that backstory about how the idea reemerged when you became Chancellor?
Well, when I came here, it was obvious that there was a hole. UIC was a comprehensive university, had as many of the disciplines and the colleges that we had, but the law school was missing. It was an obvious hole because the law school is the professional school for the humanities. We have the professional school for engineering, for the health sciences, we have the business component, but we didn't have the professional school in the humanities. And there are a lot of things that we can do together. When you have a professional school for the humanities, the type of work, the type of synergy that exists among different disciplines and the law school is amazing. And as you know, we are working, I'm very excited about the work that you're doing right now in the law school, trying to establish the programs that take advantage of the potential that we have in the law school and across the campus. I also have to tell you, my experience with the law school at the University of South Carolina was that the law school faculty members can argue very convincingly on both sides of an issue, and sometimes in the same meeting. This is, on one hand, this can be frustrating, but I found it very entertaining at times. So that's why I thought, oh, I missed that part. I miss interacting with the law school faculty as well.
So I was in many a meeting with you over, about a 2+ year period, and you were often the only non-lawyer in the room while we were negotiating the deal. What was that like?
Well, it cost me a lot of therapy afterwards. Well, look, it was fascinating. It was fascinating because different disciplines have different cultures, and it's based on the training that we have. Sometimes I wanted to scream because I was seeing both parties going down details that the probability of them happening was almost zero. But you're trained, right? Especially when you're talking about contracts and agreements, you're trained to imagine the most remote probability that we have and secure against it. Well, if you remember, sometimes I would say, oh, hold on, let's look at the big picture right now, because we're down a path that makes no sense, right?
Yeah,
but that's the training, that's the preparation.
more than once, you're like, can we focus on what's likely to happen? Or, you know, and I admired you for this. You were like, I'll accept that risk. We're just going to accept the risk that maybe that will happen,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
now move on. Stop addressing that and move on. So it's been about 1.5 years since John Marshall joined UIC. Any perceptions about how it's going?
Well, look, I'm thrilled how the law school community, the students, the faculty, the staff have embraced the identity of UIC. I've seen it. I've seen the participation. I've seen the branding, everything that goes. It gives me the impression, and I think it's real, that you are really proud to be part of the family, and we are very proud to have the law school with us. I think we're making progress to achieve the goals that we wanted, to create these synergies. It's not easy to do it during a pandemic. We didn't even know what a pandemic was, right? Now we know a little bit more about it. There are a lot of other things that they have come into play. But regardless of the pandemic, the work is getting done. And I'm really, really satisfied with the progress that we're making.
Excellent. Well, we've heard some things that give us some insights into what your leadership philosophy is. And you told us earlier that you learned a lot just by doing it. You had a lot of on-the-job training for being a leader. But if you could summarize or explain your leadership philosophy, how would you do that?
It's very different than it is in the corporate world or in other organizations. You're not an executive. You need to have executive skills. You need to understand numbers. You need to understand operations. But you're not an executive. You are a service leader, in essence. I remember a few years ago, the provost at Duke. We were both provosts at that time, very different environments, right? Duke and University of South Carolina. But he told me something that resonated and stayed with me. He said, look, as provost and the president, he said, it's the same thing. We're like keepers of a cemetery. We have a lot of people under us and nobody listens. Right? And that's absolutely true in academia. So you need to convene groups. You need to listen to the groups as the leader instead of expecting them to listen to you. And nothing can be done in an academic environment without consensus. Now, it's not the seeker of consensus that demonstrate leadership, and that's a Martin Luther King quote that I love. It's the builder of consensus. You need to build consensus. Don't only see where the wave is going and follow the wave, because then you're not doing your job, but build consensus around the priorities. And I think it's important to have clear priorities, limited priorities. If there are too many priorities, nobody knows what the priorities are, and fast execution. That's the one thing about the law school. The law school was a priority, was a clear priority for UIC. And once that we got into the execution stage, I wanted to move as fast as we could in a very difficult negotiation that we had. So that's, is this a philosophy? I don't know. This is what I do, Darby.
Well, thank you for sharing that. In these conversations, I like to...
My wife, by the way, has a PhD in philosophy. And when you're talking about philosophy, says, this is nonsense. This is much deeper. You need to have much deeper ideas. That's why I make it clear. That's what I do. It's not my philosophy necessarily.
So one thing I like students to think about is finding mentors and finding sponsors who can help them, because that can be so important, especially like you were a first generation student. You don't know how to maneuver the system. You need people to help you. So could you share with us a little bit about some of the mentors you've had along the way and how that's helped you and what that's taught you about being a leader?
I had great mentors in college, both as an undergraduate student, people who believed in me and helped me build my confidence. And they told me that I'm doing great and I need to pursue this opportunity or that opportunity. And the same thing in graduate school. My advisor at the University of Wisconsin was somebody that helped me build the skills that I didn't have technically, and taught me about how you overcome difficulties in the research and how you have to be persistent, you have to believe in what you're doing. When I went into academia as an assistant professor, we're talking about 26 years ago, times were different. And I was an engineer in South Carolina, right? It was like, welcome, here's your office, here's your schedule, and good luck. At that point, the university had started a mentoring program, and a senior faculty member was assigned to me. Was a great guy. Vince was is still a great guy. But fairly quickly, I figured out that if I do what he says, probably I will not do well in academia. so what I picked up from Vince was great barbecue places to have lunch together in Colombia. But the key here, I think the lesson here is that when we're talking about mentoring junior faculty, we need to pair them with people who are in the same area that they have been successful and they are interested in doing this, other than just shooting the breeze and talking about football and barbecue, right? I had a good mentor in my department chair that became dean when I became department chair, and I learned a lot from watching him, other than talking to him. And I learned a very important thing in academia, and especially in academic leadership, is to know how to pick your fights. You cannot fight for every hill that you see in front of you. And also you learn how to win and how to lose. Because if you don't learn how to win gracefully, and you don't learn how, when you have lost and stop fighting, you don't last very long in administrative positions.
I think that's a great point. Sometimes when you know that you're not going to be able to move forward, you need to stop, and maybe you put that to the side and you come back to it at a more opportune time. But I think that's so true. I've seen so many people just keep fighting when it's not going to be productive. You know, there's sometimes when you do have that one principle that you will stick up for, but often, you can't fight for everything, and you have to know when to sort of retreat a little bit.
Not everything is a principle. Not everything is a priority. I mean, choose your fights is what I keep telling all of my colleagues and my friends. And
so we have a question from one of the attendees that is, what are the most effective strategies students can use to engage with UIC's executive leadership, whether they have questions, ideas for improvement, or concerns?
I think the leadership is open to this. We want to hear from the students. Communicate directly. Whether it's an academic issue, if you want to communicate with the provost, communicate directly with the provost. Communicate directly with me. I assume this is true for you, Darby, as well, that you want to hear from the students. We want feedback. We
definitely.
want to know what the students need and what they like. Not only what you dislike. Don't communicate only if you don't like something. Tell us also what you do well and what you like, so we can preserve this and we can improve in other areas. So I think direct communication and honest communication with the leadership of the university at all levels, department chairs, deans, provost, myself, vice provost, is the best way.
Another question from an attendee. Many John Marshall students move from a private law school to a public law school with the merger. What do you think are the biggest advantages of being a public institution?
It's the cost. The cost goes down in public institutions. We are able to subsidize it, and you saw that the cost of the tuition went down. At the same time, also, the opportunity that exists here for the students in particular is that the university, because it's a much larger organization that John Marshall was, can provide services that a standalone law school could not provide. There are also opportunities to get networked with other students, although, you know, at the professional school, that becomes a little bit more of a limited activity, especially students who come part-time to John Marshall. You know, you just want to get your degree and go out. But keep in mind that the fact that you will be a UIC graduate or you are a UIC student connects you directly with a large number of other people. It's interesting how, and you know this from your undergraduate schools, it's interesting how the fact that you have gone to the same school and you have some similar experiences affects future relationships and networking. So I think that's a benefit for the rest of your careers. It's also a strong brand because of the size. And
Exactly. And I mean, we now have students have the opportunity for campus housing and rec facilities and things like that. But, what I've told some people, mainly alums who will ask, is I've said, I'm very grateful that we were part of an organization with the hospital system, with the School of Public Health during this period, because we might have been able to figure out some of the operational aspects moving forward. But to have information and access to experts in this area at this moment of time has been a tremendous help in guiding us how to proceed and understanding how to keep people safe. So there's some advantages that are there, maybe students don't see directly, but have helped us make decisions and keep the campus open for people longer than we probably would have in the middle of the pandemic if we had been on our own. Here's another one. It feels like we're living during the most divided time in decades. Are you seeing those divisions at UIC? How can we come together as a university, and how can we create unity in the country?
I think the university is easier because we don't see as much division at UIC that we see across the country. It's more of by selection, by the way that people choose their university, and both students and faculty and staff. I think there's more uniformity in terms of what we believe and want to protect, and what the values are. There may be some differences in philosophies, in approaches to politics and so on, but when it comes to the core values of respect, trust in science, respect of others regardless of who they are, respect of different opinions, I think it's much easier in our environment. It's a much more difficult question about the country. And I think that we need to make an effort to understand the people that disagree with us. I believe that what we have experienced over the last few months and the last few years by now, actually, is very disturbing. It reminds me of my home country in Greece in the early 80s, when for the first time there was a socialist government in power after a number of years that they were center-right type of governance, what you call in the European system the Christian Democrats. And all of a sudden the country was heavily divided. The two colors there were not blue and red, were green and blue, but they were green restaurants and there were blue restaurants, and you wouldn't go to a green restaurant. There were cafes that they were either green or blue. They were never colors outside, but people knew that the person who has this, it's one of them. It's not one of us. Even families, that, if you were dating somebody at that time, the first question was, well, what family does he come from? Or does he come from, right? Crazy. And it led into a division that went in for years and was the basis for all the problems that the country eventually had. So we absolutely need to avoid this. I'm hopeful that this administration, this new president, who's a moderate, by the way, will try to bring the country together. And I think that still there is hope. I think that trying to understand the others, trying to understand how, we use this term in the polls, right? Uneducated white or low educated white. What does this mean? These people have gone crazy? They haven't. They have faced financial issues as well. They have lost jobs in a lot of rural areas. There is no hope for them, for their children. We're too expensive to bring them. So we need to understand the needs of the different groups and try to address the needs of these groups if we want to heal the gaps that we have. At the same time, of course, that we deal with the needs of our African American students and members of our community, that they are facing worse problems, our Latinx, and so on. So I think we need to do everybody's needs and try to see what we can do to address these problems.
Well, we have another question that has come in, and it's sort of on the opposite end. And I don't know if this person asked this question of a lot of people or if there's some special insight here, but it's, what is your go-to karaoke song?
I'm tone deaf. It's interesting that you're asking this question, because a couple of weeks ago we were at the house of a friend, just he and his wife and myself and Diro, and they had a karaoke machine. And they put a few songs, Italian and Greek. And after I tried a couple of times, the machine was short-circuited. The sad part is, this is the second time that I try karaoke. It's the second time that this happens. So these machines are telling me, stay away from this. You're just driving us crazy when you even try it. So I'm sorry.
I'm in your camp. No one wants to hear me try to sing.
Yep,
So.
it's scary.
Well, I know you have been working tremendously hard during COVID. You work hard even when we're not in COVID, but I know it's been long hours. But other than work, what are some of the other things that you've been doing during COVID?
Not much, Darby. During the last few months, it has been, everything has blended. Right? Personal life and professional life had become one and the same. I had many meetings on Sundays, on Saturdays, late in the evening. The couple of things that I managed to do was to walk every day for an hour and a half, walk a lot in the West Loop, at UIC, even make it down to the Loop sometimes by the river. And then the other silver lining is that I managed to have a cup of coffee with my wife during weekdays as well, because usually we wouldn't see each other from 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning until 6, and then maybe go together to some event. Now at least we manage to find 15 minutes during the day and have a cup of coffee together.
Few more personal questions. What's one skill you have that we would not find on your CV or resume?
My resume, my CV tells you what I studied during my undergraduate years, but it doesn't tell you what I was doing at that time. What I was really doing at that time was playing basketball. I played basketball for a number of years. I started when I was 13 years old. And in Greece, as in most of Europe, the college sports are not, they're not the minor leagues in essence for the pros, or the student athletes are not at this level. All the action is in the clubs. So I started the club system. I was traded 2 or 3 times up, and during my college time for a couple of years, I was playing in the top division. Well, I was playing is an exaggeration. I was practicing and sitting at the bench in a top division team. so that was something that you cannot find in my resume.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I know that you go see our Flames play a lot, so that explains the basketball connection.
And I refuse to participate in the Dean's channels and shoot free throws because I have a reputation to protect, and I'm worried about it.
And another audience question has come in is, are there updates on efforts at UIC to make it an even more diverse and anti-racist campus?
Yes. In fact, you may have seen the announcement that we sent out. It has been a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks ago now, talking about the Bridge to the Faculty program, which has been working with the first cohort. Now we doubled the number to 20 for next year. And I don't know if the law school has got...
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, what we are doing is we are trying to get people early. So we are bringing into UIC new postdocs from underrepresented minority groups with a clear understanding and a promise that if you come to us as a postdoc and within 2 years you meet certain criteria, we guarantee you a faculty position. It's a competitive process for all departments in the university to do that. We started with a pilot last year, so we have the first cohort of 10 that we brought in this August. And now, because of the success that we had, a number of new faculty postdocs who soon to become faculty members in this group are the first ones in their disciplines that they are underrepresented minorities in the entire department. So we doubled the amount this year. So this year we're looking for 20. And if it goes as well as I expect, it's going to be even more next year. And that's a very promising way to diversify the faculty. I don't know if the law school applied for one of these positions and got one or not. It's by application, by competition.
We actually were initially told we weren't eligible because law school doesn't hire postdocs. We hire people who have the JD. And then it changed, but we weren't informed. Anyway, we'll be in that mix next year.
You should be in the mix with more than one department next year, because these are new money for the law school that's coming from the central coffers, and that will help us with the faculty issue. We are hiring more mental health professionals that will reflect the demographics of our student body. And that was one of the demands of the students and supported by the faculty. We are strengthening the African American academic network that we have, which are the support services for undergraduate students. We are adding staff members in that group. And we also created a review board, a public safety review board, to look at issues that have to do with policing within UIC. And how can we reimagine this? What can we do differently? How can we build this public safety component of the future that we need? That was a first set of measures. We are already working, and I'm about to announce it publicly whenever we have a second set of measures. But we already talked to the African American Cultural Center that we have on campus about a couple of marquee events that we will fund and have on an annual basis, led by students and led by faculty. So one based on scholarship and one based more on community engagement, student activism issues. We have on Zoom today and tomorrow, 3 outside experts that we have invited at the recommendation of the Black faculty, of the senior Black faculty of the university, to come and help us with implementation of plans to diversify student body, further diversify, especially in the case of Black students and Black faculty, the student body and the faculty. They're outstanding national leaders. It's Claude Steele, it's Earl Lewis and Nancy Cantor. If these names don't ring a bell, Claude Steele was the provost at Berkeley. Earl Lewis was the president of the Mellon Foundation and provost at Emory. And Nancy Cantor has been president or chancellor to, I don't even know institutions by now. It was Urbana-Champaign, Syracuse, and now she's at Rutgers. And all 3 of them have been very successful in doing this, and 2 of them are African Americans as well. So this is the progress that we are making. We're moving along.
And our students and faculty members may know Claude Steele because he really developed the concept of stereotype threat, which is something we teach during our first year classes here.
Correct. And they're doing all of this pro bono, which is amazing. I mean, they really want to help us. They believe that this is in a unique spot, a great university, and they want to help.
You may have given me the answer earlier, but have you had a chance to read a book or watch a movie recently that sort of resonated with you and you might recommend to others?
Well, look, you cannot survive the pandemic without binge watching in Netflix. I mean, I did what everybody else did. Not a movie necessarily, but a couple of series that I loved. I love The Ozarks. I don't know if people have watched this. Starts in Chicago. It's a very interesting drug story and so on. And there was another series in Netflix called The French Village, which is during the Second World War in France. And usually when we talk about the Second World War, we look at what happened during the war, and then everybody was happy after that, right? The good guys won, and great. Well, there were a lot of challenges that Europe faced afterwards, and the aftermath of the Second World War is something that is unique in this production from France.
So here's another attendee question. Is there a strategy for helping graduates looking for jobs if the pandemic continues for many more months or even years? I appreciate everything UIC and the law school have done, but with so much uncertainty, I'm worried about the future. What can we do now to prepare?
Well, that's a difficult question. That's an important question. Honestly, I don't know much about the career services that the law school has, and I will rely on Darby to fill me in. But we do, Dean Dickerson, I'm sorry, but we do have a good career, a very good career center at UIC that we bring in employers from outside to interview our students. Maintaining this during the pandemic is critical. It's not necessarily true that all sectors have been hit hard. There are sectors that they're actually doing much better than others during this pandemic. So I think that enhancing the services of the career centers, and I'm glad you're bringing it up, it's something that honestly we haven't talked much at the cabinet level or between the deans, and that gives me a very good idea to have this discussion with the deans and with the cabinet. We need to enhance the career placement and the career services. Now, how long is the pandemic going to last? I don't know, but the news today were encouraging. Those of you who may have not seen it, Pfizer came out, said that their vaccine has a very high efficacy and efficiency rate. They're talking about 90%, which was a dream when we started this. So maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel. And a couple of the therapeutics, the monoclonal antibodies, which is the cocktail that they gave to President Trump and Governor Christie. Christie actually was in much worse shape from what we understand, right? Had pre-existing conditions and boom, like new, within 3 days or 4 days. And that's the clinical trial that we're doing here at UIC about the monoclonal antibodies. And I hear the same story from our physicians. So we may have a therapeutic also that appears to be very strong. So don't lose faith. I don't think, and I'm not optimistic here, I'm trying to be realistic. I don't think that we will be done in 3 or 4 months, but I don't have it out of the realm of possibilities that next summer we start seeing massive immunization and better therapeutics, which basically means that our lives will improve significantly by next fall.
Two things to follow up on what you just said. One, I was going to ask you if you were in a position to talk about some of the vaccine work and other COVID-related work that UI Health is doing. And the other is a student-focused question. I mean, today we announced that we're suspending the in-class portions of our hybrid classes. Could you talk to us a little bit about what went into that decision and whether you, what I told the students, I said, that doesn't necessarily signal that we'll start the spring in online mode. So don't go there yet. So can you confirm that I'm right?
Sure. So let's start first of all with the vaccines. We're having 2 clinical trials right now with Moderna and Johnson, and I think there is a third one in terms of the vaccines. The Moderna vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine that the public announcement came out today is the one that is very similar to Moderna. Moderna is just a couple of weeks behind them, not a couple of months. It's a different type of vaccine, that it's not based on a dead virus or a piece of a dead virus or live virus. It's more of a process through which you develop antibodies before you get the virus. And it's a new approach to vaccines. It's a biomolecular approach. It appears that the Moderna vaccine will be very similar to the Pfizer vaccine. And that's great because the world needs more than one manufacturer in this one in order to cover the entire world. The number that I heard about Pfizer kind of surprised me. They're talking about 50 million vaccines. That's not enough. Moderna is talking about 300 million that they have available. So if the 2 of them work, we are in good shape, and UIC is doing them. And of course, we're doing the studies on the therapeutics. As you know, we're doing the saliva test. And we are doing it not in the way that the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign does, which is trying to mitigate the situation, because they live in a bubble, quite frankly. We are not living in a bubble. We are embedded in a big city. We cannot draw the borders around the university and the law school and say, okay, you're protected if you're in here, and you're not going out of here anyway. Every day, the students, the faculty go into the community, come back into the community. So we knew this from the beginning, but we use this surveillance testing as a monitor to know when things are start getting bad, right? Over the last 3 weeks, we have seen a significant increase in the surveillance testing that we have. We went from less than 0.5% to last week was 2%. Right? It reflects what's happening around us. If you see the number of new cases in Illinois, they're over 10,000, 12,000. We were the largest number of new cases in the country and the largest number of deaths in Illinois in the country for 3 days in a row. Right? So there is a problem. It's becoming a hot spot, and the slope is very high. Right? We have no evidence of transmission in the classroom. All the cases that we had, we do very good tracing. All the cases that we have detected through the surveillance testing is based on social gatherings, a number of gatherings of primarily undergraduate students and athletes outside of the university, community transmission, people that they come, they get positive, they get tested positive, and immediately they tell us, you know, my cousin or my aunt, or not somebody in the immediate household, because they're not supposed to be coming in, but somebody in the surrounding environment. So that's community transmission. And we have seen limited, small number of cases that it was in work, but not during work. Because let's go and have a lunch somewhere. So when you let your guard down and you take off the masks, that's when transmission is taking place. Nevertheless, given the numbers that we see, and given that we have almost completed the semester by now, for me, taking the risk to continue the face-to-face for another 2 weeks, which is what's left, right? What's the benefit? We're almost there. We have done what we needed to do face-to-face. So that was the decision that that we were making. I don't know that we announced this today. I thought that the provost was talking to the deans, right, trying to figure out, okay, are you ready to do something like this? And we'll give the faculty this week to pivot. But then that's 1 week until Thanksgiving and 1 week after Thanksgiving. So I think these 2 weeks will be fine. The plan for next fall, for next spring, is to do what we did in the fall. Not to be 100% online, but be in a hybrid mode. Where are we going to be in January? If we have come over this wave, we will start exactly the same way that we started in August. If it's not, if we're still at peak, then I worry about a lot of other things, quite frankly, because that means that the healthcare delivery system has been stressed to its limits or beyond its limits over the next, because if this lasts for 2 months, we have a big problem. So I hope that we'll be on the other side of the wave. But even if we're not all the way down, we may start like this and pivot to hybrid, because we need you to be in class as well, and we need to continue to provide the experience that you want.
Chancellor, thank you for being with us this evening. I'm going to give you the last opportunity to share any thoughts or words of wisdom for our law students.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion. Again, I want to see you face to face at some point when the conditions allow it. And the last thing that I would like to mention to you, what characterizes the graduates of this university, the students, the faculty of this university, is the fact that we care. We care about what's happening around us. We care for others in the community, and we support people. Keep in mind that we demonstrate our humanity, if you want, our civility, our culture, not by how we treat those who we need them to be good to us or those we love, but how we treat and how we support those who struggle. And maybe we don't even know them. I always find it for myself that I see somebody that struggles and say, look, remember that it could be you. If the circumstances have not worked exactly how they work, it could be in their position as well. And I think this is true for everybody. So please keep this in mind as you continue, as you go out in your careers, be kind to those who struggle. And remember that it could be you at some point.
Fantastic advice. Again, thank you for being with us. Thanks to the people who joined us this evening. I know many others will tune in and watch this online. Have a wonderful evening.